Summer. You would think it'd be the dog days, but I think we had the dog days. Today is beautiful, no humidity, 70 degrees, clear, and you can breathe. And well, uh, we're brought to you by the National Tomato and Mayo Federation, and they say visit your farmer's market regularly this summer and get those fresh garden grown tomatoes and make those tomato mayo sandwiches. There's a whole bunch of recipes. My favorite is you get either Wonder Bread or Sunbeam bread, and you squash the bread down a little bit, and then you grill them on each side like French toast, and then you put like two nice thick slices of tomato on, and a nice layer of mayonnaise and some black ground pepper on the top, and you put the top piece on and you squish it down just a little, and it's fabulous. It doesn't get much better than that. The Tomato and Mayo Foundation. In summer, it's a time for road trips, the quintessential road trip. And a long time ago in Still River, I had a friend who was related distantly to the Swedish explorer Amundsen, and who I guess went to the North Pole. And we'd explore. We were traveling buds and for a while, and we went on a road trip. It was this college graduation, and his dad was a TWA pilot, I think, and he gave us his credit cards to go to town, so we did. And we went up to Maine and took to Bar Harbor, and camped out, and got up in the morning in the rain and went and took the ferry over to Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. I'm upset that the ferry doesn't run anymore. They've discontinued it. That was a nice ship ride, and we went through Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. Nova Scotia is like Scotland, and I went up there a couple of times, and there's the big Cape Breton cliffs, I think, and the sheep fields and the hills. And then you go to Halifax, which is sort of like a city in Scotland, and they have the changing of the guard and all of that. It's very English. But when you get into New Brunswick, it all turns French. It's like going from England to France without the channel. And well, border crossings, happen on road trips, especially if you're going up to Canada. And when we were coming back late one evening, not knowing where we were going to stay, looking at this old little tiny abandoned church in the field somewhere, and then we come to the border of Mars Hill, Maine. What a town. And come up to the little brick guardhouse, the border house, and the old fella, must have been about 85, he's asleep in there. And I go in and wake him up, and he said, "Is there any place you could stay around here?" He said, "Well, there's Maz McKay's guest house in Mars Hill down the road." So we went down the road. And Mars Hill is like a little podunk from like the early 19th century. It has one traffic light, just red, one light that blinks, and one gas station. I think it might have a church, and you can drive through it in about a minute and a half. And interestingly enough, I remember it had a Dairy Queen. And went to Grandma McKay's. You signed in at this podium, and it was like going back into the late 1800s. It was like The living room had a fireplace with two Civil War rifles crisscrossed over it with the American and Confederate flag. And then it had some World War I posters, and it had all antiques, and the place smelled musty, but it was kind of a good smell. And you signed in at the podium, and whatever room was open, you signed in on that line, and you went up and took the room. And we went up there, and it was like a huge feather bed. And, you know, I felt kind of squeamish sleeping in the same bed with a friend, but it was like you could fit 4 people in between us, you know. And it had a bathroom down the end of the hall with a big old stand-up bathtub with a big, nice table, and with stacks of magazines and a jar of cigars. And I said, oh man. So I ran a bath and got down and opened the magazine and lit up the stogie and opened the window and had a grand old time. And when it came time to go to bed, there's a big old grandfather clock in the hall. And it had an ominous sound. It would go dong, 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 like every 15 minutes or half an hour. And so I'm getting in and going to sleep, and then about 12:31, hear this horrible sound. It sounded like down the hall in the next room, a Tyrannosaurus Rex was sleeping with a gorilla, and they were both snoring. And wake up and go, what the heck is that? And you go down and check it out. So I said, I'm not going down there. And it was the horriblest rumble. It rumbled the floors. And went down and said the door was open. There was a big old trucker in there. And he poked him on the shoulder, woke him up, and the trucker just rumbled and turned around and slept on the other side and stopped snoring. Thank God. And we woke up in the morning, and Mama Kay was down there, little wheezing old grandma with her granddaughter, teenage granddaughter. They made us a breakfast that can't be beat. And it was only like $12 or something. And we drove out the next morning past the Dairy Queen. Road trip, Mars Hill, Maine. But I'm really here to talk about economics. With all the world budgetary crisis and deficits going through trillions of dollars, I think I found an answer. Believe it or not, it was in the Bible. I remembered a long while ago, I was looking in it, and apparently in the Old Testament, the early days of Israel, the first kingdom, I think, they would have this big meeting in Israel, and all the 12 tribes, maybe 13 or 14 tribes. They had the lost tribe, an orphan tribe, where you weren't really born an Israelite, but if you were a wannabe, you could join the 13th tribe. And they would have this huge meeting with all this, I guess, CFOs of all the tribes, and all the people would meet for a week, or more. And what they would do is all debts were absolved. All debts of Israel to its people and all their debts to it. And then the people would meet and absolve all the debts to each other. So they would start off with like a clean slate. It was like every 7 or 17 years they would do this. I call it clean slate economics. And I think we should do that. I think that we could just wholesaling have this huge, you know, meetings that they do have with countries, and everybody just absolve all their debts to each other and all money owed to each other. Start off at ground zero, so to speak, and then come back. Then everybody who had debts that they didn't pay back or couldn't pay back, everything from student loans to car loans to mortgages, they would just be wiped out. And all debts to banks would be wiped out, and all the banks' debts to everybody else, and then the government would be wiped. Would just go. Everything would just go zip down to zero, like you would zero